right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Blackhawks Banter. Got it wrong already on the first shot, off to a great start. Blackhawks Banter, presented by the Hockey Writers, live tonight. This is our weekly panel discussion on all things Chicago Blackhawks. I am your host / discussion leader for this week, Greg Boysen, and in addition to my Blackhawks coverage over at the Hockey Writers, I also do the daily Today in Hockey History posts, also the prospects, news and rumors, and cover the AHL Central when there's actual AHL Central hockey going on, credentialed with the Ice Hogs and Wolves down there. And just because I don't have enough to do, I'm also an editor at the Hockey Writers. So I have our Blackhawks crew assembled for another riveting discussion. I'm sure we have our longest tenured Blackhawks writer at the Hockey Writers and our beacon of positivity, Gail Kauchak. How you doing tonight, Gail?
Hi there. Oh, I'm definitely tenured.
All right. We also have Brooke LoFurno, who we learned last week might be the only person in Chicago left that still has faith in Alexander Nylander. How you doing tonight, Brooke?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. And finally, Shaun Filippelli, who just won't let those darn Patrick Kane to the Buffalo Sabres trade rumors die. But in all seriousness, that was a really well-written, thought-out post. If you haven't seen it, head over to the Blackhawks page on the Hockey Writers site and check it out. We may finally be trading Kane to Buffalo. Probably not, but, you know, who knows? All right, so those are
Alex Nylander might be in that deal. Who knows?
I don't think they want him back this soon. So this it's usually a time of year. We're in mid-November. This is usually a time of year we should have no problems finding things to talk about. But in COVID world, we don't have much hockey going on. But we do have a few fun, well, not really fun on this first topic, but we have some things to discuss. And we'll start with Brent Seabrook was in the news the last few days. Usually heading into training camp the last few years, we get all kinds of articles from our beat writers about how Seabrook's in the best condition of his life and he's feeling great. And those haven't worked out so well. But this time it sounds different. He, after all those surgeries he had that caused him to miss most of the season last year, he did an interview with the fantastic national writer for The Athletic, Pierre LeBrun, talked about his physical health, but he also had a very interesting and frankly brave discussion about his mental health as well. He revealed that just before being honored for his 1,000th game last season, or I'm sorry, March of 2018, his longtime friend and personal trainer, Scott Herbert, committed suicide. And at the end of the year, his father was diagnosed with a rare condition called autoimmune encephalitis. I think I'm not a medical doctor. I just played one on the internet, so I don't know if I pronounced that right. Anyway, it's a rare condition that causes swelling of the brain. And, you know, that probably played a major role in some of his struggles. So what are your guys' thoughts on Seabrook and what he had to reveal, and what are your expectations for him coming into this season, whenever it may begin? Gail, we'll start with your thoughts.
Well, first off, I just think that it was incredibly commendable of Seabrook to come forward. You know, he's a very private person. He likes to kind of stay behind the scenes, and for him to come forward and do this interview, it must have been pretty important to him. And he did say that, and it was brought up in the article, very good article, by the way, excellent, that he, you know, it was something that was really important to him, and it meant a lot to him, and he wanted to raise awareness for these two things. So he wanted to raise awareness for you know, suicide awareness, as well as this rare disease, well, not disease, but rare condition. From what I read from the article, that people can misconstrue this as like a psychiatric, you know, people are going crazy, or they're having psychiatric issues. And that's really scary. And I can't even imagine what that would be like to go through that with your dad. And it sounds like there was months and months of tests and trying to figure it all out, and the anxiety and not really know what's going on. So it's true that I'm sure that this affected him. And then you put those surgeries on top of that. And I commend him for coming to the table with all of that. And I think that it just goes to show that this is why everybody has so much respect for him. This is why they don't want to just throw him to the wolves. This is why he's a great leader in the locker room. And this is why everybody is going to keep him around. Well, obviously they're going to keep him around because he has a no movement clause, but it just goes to show that he does bring a lot to the table. And I'm glad that he was able to get this off of his chest and maybe clear the air a little bit and move forward.
Okay, Brooke, what do you think about the interview, or what do you think we'll see out of number 7 this season?
So I have 3 thoughts because Gail actually just gave me another one. But the first one is, it almost kind of reminds me of Brian Bickle. You know, like everyone was kind of harping on him because his play was declining, and everyone just thought that he was just whatever, maybe past his prime. And Seabrook, I think everyone just kind of assumed the same thing, that it's because he's older, past his prime, whatever. But without us realizing, or maybe not taking into account, how your mental health or how that plays into your life and how that plays into the game, it affects you just as much as it physically does. So it reminded me a lot of Bickle. And so my heart actually kind of breaks a little bit hearing about all of that. And I feel like so awful for him because no one should have to go through that. And then I was thinking about how this actually kind of makes sense because at the Winter Classic, back in, was it 2019? Yeah, it's 2019. Sorry.
2018.
I don't know. But he got choked up talking with Pierre after the game, talking about his family back at home. So I think we realized, or we kind of figured maybe that something was wrong. So he didn't have to say anything, but it was very brave of him to do that. And then my third thought was, this is kind of like the second close thing that's happened to the Blackhawks with suicide, with Seabrook losing his friend, and then with them losing their equipment manager. Yeah. That I feel like it's kind of an excellent initiative for him to take to advocate for these types of things. So I really hope he has a great redemption year. I have faith that he can do it. And I want that for him really badly because he was through so much and it's hard to hear.
Shaun, what are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, great thoughts to begin with, obviously. First and foremost, we're all fans. We all want to see our teams win and compete, and, our favorite players doing the best they can and playing at peak levels. So when it comes to Seabrook's health and his injuries, even when those were hitting to the point that we knew about, the topics that we knew about, you still wanted him to get better. But now you get a little bit more of a raw discussion and a little bit more of that background, and it really hits a different level of empathy. And I mean, obviously, first and foremost, he was looking at the best for the guy to get over any injuries he has physically. But as has been touched on, that hopefully, people can recognize that there's things that go on mentally as well with all of us that are just as important as the physical. So I hope he's doing whatever he can to cope and to deal and to progress through that. I think it was extremely brave, as has been touched on, for him to come out and explain what he has. And perhaps this was a weight lifted off his shoulders, and can, I think Brooke just said it, give him a chance to have a redemption year. The reality is he is aging. So as an athlete, I don't think that we can expect the same level of play that he was once at, but perhaps now that this is out there and he's had a chance to sort of let this out, he can come out with a little bit more of a breath of fresh air, so to speak. And I do just want to say that I think it's extremely admirable that he's using his platform for the best of all reasons. And for any ears he can have and any influence he can have in a positive way, kudos to him for doing that.
Absolutely. And as someone who can speak from personal experience, when you're dealing with grief, it can make the most normal routine thing as daily activities seem impossible. So to deal with that and try and play professional hockey at the highest level, it couldn't have been easy. It's probably still not easy. So for him to come out and say that, mental illness is such a bad stigma in this country, and especially in the world of hockey, a hockey locker room. You're supposed to be a tough guy. You're never hurt. You're never sad. You're a hockey player. You don't have feelings. For him to come out and say that is very commendable and appreciated, because he's raising awareness to some very important topics. Suicide prevention is very important. And it's a cause that's near and dear to my heart as well. As far as the hockey aspect goes, hopefully these operations, the surgeries he had, to be honest with you, when all this first started and they announced, basically anything that bends on his body was getting operated on last winter, I pretty much thought he was going the Hossa way, the injury retirement. That's how they're going to circumvent his contract. And, but obviously he wants to play again. He was skating. He was trying to come back for the postseason. Didn't work out. So he's obviously going through the motions to play again. I give Seabrook a hard time a lot, but it's more for anger towards his contract than him. And that contract's not his fault. Anybody on the world would have said, oh yeah, I'm going to sign that. They weren't worried about, well, I might not be good in 3 years. They're going to take it. Best case scenario is that he returns to, he's never going to return to what we saw during the Stanley Cup runs. That's just not going to happen. But he hopefully returns to be, at the very least serviceable, a good player again, a decent player. In the best case scenario, he has a nice comeback here. And then if you're really serious about this rebuilding thing, maybe, just maybe, he's good enough to where you can talk to him about possibly waiving his no movement clause for the expansion draft, maybe going to a place like Seattle, close to home. He's from the British Columbia, not far from there, be closer to his family. He's checks a lot of boxes off for an expansion team. He's that veteran leader. Everybody raves about his locker room leadership. He's the perfect guy to fit in at a team that will probably have a lot of young players, but a team full of players that are brand new to each other. He's a known commodity. So for the marketing standpoint, he checks off a lot of boxes too. And then if he wants to do that, it also helps the Blackhawks in their rebuild as far as, clearing that contract. Maybe you have to sweeten the pot a little bit and trade a draft pick or a prospect, but that's a best case scenario. But the bottom line is, hopefully he's okay mentally first. That's the most important. And I'll be cheering for him as that standpoint, regardless what I say about how slow he is on Twitter. As long as he's okay between the ears, then I'm satisfied. So we'll be cheering for number 7, that's for sure. All right, we got the serious stuff out of the way first. Let's move on to something we can all probably have a few chuckles with. The NHL released their reverse retro jerseys to responses. We'll just say responses. There was a lot of hot takes flying around the interwebs today on the jerseys. The Blackhawks, they decided to go with their an ode to the 1940s. Basically, the main color of the jersey, you've probably seen it. The main color of the jersey is black. It's got the red shoulder panels, some red striping. The striping on the sleeves are kind of reminiscent of the old barber pole jerseys. Some of us are old enough to remember when they busted those out in the 91-92 season for the 75th anniversary. The logo they're using is the, we've seen it before. It's the circle logo. They've had it on their Winter Classic jerseys in the past. So what do you guys think of the Blackhawks jersey? And as far as if you've seen the rest of them around the league, what are some of your favorites from around the league, and which ones do you think need to be thrown back in the scrap pile? We'll start with Brooke. What do you think of these jerseys?
Okay, so the Blackhawks one, obviously I don't know really what I was expecting, because there's kind of 1,000 different ways they could have gone. But I will say I like them. I don't know if I love them, but I like them. maybe I'll turn into love in a little bit, but right now I like them. I kind of always, my family's always really been big on their black jerseys, especially. So to kind of see the black and red incorporated a lot in this jersey, I think is a really cool combination. And I love the old kind of Blackhawk thing. I think it does look really cool. Maybe it'll look even better on the ice, but so I do like them. But some of my favorites I think that I've seen, I think the Carolina Hurricanes one with the Whalers, I think is really cool. And I kind of like the Kings purple and yellow thing that they got going on. I know that was an ode to Wayne Gretzky, but I know that probably sounds bad to say because we don't really like the Kings, but I kind of think they're cool. And I'm trying to think. Yeah. I kind of thought New York's was kind of cool too.
Yeah.
With the Statue of Liberty. I thought that was cool. But the one that I was really underwhelmed by, I didn't really like Winnipeg's that much. And I don't feel like Nashville, it didn't even seem like they made many change. It seemed like it was like their exact same jersey, it seemed like, but
not much you can do with that one.
Yeah, really, that's a good point. But
you can change
and I
an
didn't really
awful
like
color.
ours that much, but yeah, ours is good, so I'll take it. It could be worse.
Shaun, what do you think?
Good segue. It could be worse. I don't know what I expected either, to be honest. I think it's cool. I think it's clean. It's modern-ish. I like the black. I always like the Blackhawks black jerseys. But I will say that I think they failed at sort of taking an opportunity to be a little bit more creative or a little bit more edgy or do something a little bit more out of the box. It feels like most of the organizations who sort of already have their fan bases sticking around for good didn't really take this opportunity to do much because they know they're going to sell jerseys either way. Whereas a lot of those fan bases that can seemingly use a couple more bucks went a little bit more off the wall with their designs. And I respect that. They had a chance to do that and they did that. The Hawks didn't really do that. So I think they fall middle of the pack. I think they're okay. I like the black, but I wish they did a little bit more. As far as the best and worst, some of these worst are bad. Like Brooke alluded to, some of them just look exactly like they already look. And the two that stood out to me right away, and it's not just because I don't like Boston, but the Bruins jersey is just gross to me. I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, it looks exactly the same, just with a brighter color. And the Islanders, same thing. Those two jerseys look like it's what they're already wearing. So, I know it might be a little bit of a different armband or a little bit of a different shade, but big deal. So those two, I think, are the worst as far as, bad designing or at least lack of creativity, so to speak. And then the best, I have to say it, I don't know if it's because of a Canadian bias, but the Avalanche's ode to the Nordiques is amazing. The way that they put that together, use their colors, use their look, but took the Nordiques branding and gave them that honor is wonderful. So even being in the Toronto area, usually we don't get along. And they don't get along with us usually in that other province over there. But in this case, when it comes to hockey, I want to see another team there and I want them to come back. So this is really cool to see. So the Avalanche hit it out of the park with that one.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on the Hawks jersey. I'm going to hold final judgment until I actually see them being worn by hockey players in an actual game, not some model in camouflage pants on some street corner somewhere. So, they're kind of, there they are. They lack the creativity as some of the others do. They're once again using the same logo that they've used multiple times before. This could have been their chance to maybe try something different, maybe stick their toe in the water of making a change, seeing how people react. So it's just kind of like, let's just put this guy, as you said, they probably don't have to worry about jersey sales. They're gonna sell a bunch of them regardless what they put out. Maybe not as many as before, but definitely they'll sell more jerseys than a lot of those other teams. But I'll see what they look like when we actually get to see them on the ice before I pass final judgment on those. As far as around the league, I agree. I'm a huge 90s hockey nerd. I mean, that's why I started the 90s hockey Twitter account. So any of those jerseys that pay homage, the Whalers jerseys for the Hurricanes, I love. I'm probably going to get a table of jersey, one of those. I love the Nordiques with the Avalanche colors. I know some people purists are pissed about it, but get a life. The Kings one I love because it mixes the 90s Gretzky jerseys with their original, purple and gold. There's not enough like crazy colors in the league, and the Devils with their green I thought was really cool. we need more greens, we need more purples, more. We've got enough blue and red and black. Let's get some fun colors out there, mix it up a little bit. As far as the worst one goes, and these aren't just because grew up hating both of these teams, but the Blues one is awful. They took those terrible jerseys from the 90s with that weird red triangle and then just reverse it. So you got the Blues wearing a red jersey. Just makes no sense. It's no, hard pass. And the Red Wings were just like, let's just put our practice jerseys on and call them, like, they're just all white, same logo with a silver stripe. They look like something you would see at a U10 tournament at your local park district. They're bleh. So those are my thoughts.
And he was like, is that their away jersey?
Yeah, it's no creativeness, but there's some wild ones out there. Gail, what do you think of these jerseys?
Okay, well, first off, they were incredibly not creative, the Blackhawks, because it's basically the same jersey as the USHL Chicago Steel. It's the same. It's the same. It just has different logo.
I wonder if they've gotten a phone call from their lawyers.
Yeah, right. Yeah. My favorite Blackhawks jersey is still the Winter Classic. Is it the Winter Classic? I don't even know, but the one that they came out with most recently, just the straight black and white. I just love the contrast of that, and I really, really, really want one of those. So that's where I stand with the Blackhawks. But I gotta say, I thought that the Panthers, the Florida Panthers jersey was pretty cool because it's got a hockey stick and a palm tree on the shoulder.
I think that was their original shoulder patch when they first joined the league. I actually think that's from their inaugural season, I believe. It is pretty cool. And the whole dark blue is nice. That's sharp.
Yeah. See, I don't know the history like you do. I'm just like taking it all at face value. So that I think might have been one of my favorites. And what's behind the Ducks jersey? I just think that's it's hideous.
They actually wore those in the 90s. They had those for like a game or two. It was back when they were owned by Disney. That should explain it right there.
Okay. That was my least favorite.
Yeah, that one's the Coyotes one is really cool if they didn't have all that weird stuff at the bottom of the jersey. If it was just the purple with the coyote.
The Coyotes one that they have that has I don't know, but the most recent one again, that one's really cool. This one I didn't like so much. No,
it would be cool if they didn't have that funky stuff at the bottom. If it was just the purple with that kind of cool southwestern coyote head on it, that'd be pretty good. There are some good ones, and there's hits and misses, as you're gonna have with anything. Bottom line is this is all a money grab. That is what it is. So it's fun to have these, and at least they're trying to do something fun to get in the news. The NBA I think does it right with their uniforms. I don't watch a ton of NBA, but I know each team has like 4 or 5 different uniforms, and the home team gets to choose which one they wear, and they mix it up. So I think the NHL can do more of that. Just anything that gets you retweets and talked about on non-hockey avenues, good or bad, is not necessarily a bad thing. Getting eyes towards the league is always a good thing. All right, we'll move on to more of our business end of the Blackhawks. There's still some unsigned players out there. One that should be coming back, and a couple that have likely played their last game in a Blackhawks uniform until Stan brings them back in 2 or 3 years. Dylan Strome, he still has not signed a new contract after receiving a qualifying offer last month. Scott Powers of The Athletic reported almost a month ago that both sides were not close to a deal. We haven't really heard anything since. What do you guys think is the holdup here? Obviously, it's either money or term. So let's play GM here for a moment, if we shall. What kind of contract would you give Dylan Strome if you were in charge of that sort of thing? Keep in mind the Blackhawks have, according to the Hockey Writers salary cap page, they have roughly a little over $5.2 million in cap space to play with. So we need to be realistic here. Shaun, we'll start with you. What do you think, Dylan Strome, if you were in charge, what would you come up with?
Yeah, so I think all parties involved are in an interesting spot, Strome and the Hawks combined. Strome obviously has a bit of a resurgence that he's currently looking to continue to propel with through his career and his lack of success in his early years. So he's looking to, cash in on that, so to speak. The Hawks are obviously looking to rebuild and are not going to be throwing a lot of money at anybody anytime soon. So that combined with the fact that the flat salary cap and there's not a lot of money going out from any teams for any signings this offseason, I'm going to say that I think it's financial holdup as well. I can't see how they're going to be able to get him in or would want to get him signed in for more than a couple million a year, 2 to 3 max. And I would personally like to see them sign him on for at least 3 years so he matches DeBrincat's term and they can really have a chance to see what kind of cohesion they can continue to build and give them both that chance to build that up as the rest of the team develops and then see what they have in those two when that term is up and if this team is in a better position to compete. So I'd say anywhere between 2 and 3 million, perhaps somewhere in the middle is a sweet spot for 3 years would be my offer.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of funny how this has gone. If you remember last offseason, there was talk, when DeBrincat got his deal that you were going to sign both of them and they both were going to be in the $6 to $7 million range. And thank God they didn't do that. For as much stuff as Stan Bowman gets criticized for not jumping the gun on, 2 months of pretty good hockey, that was the right call there. As far as his contract goes, I think you look at the Kubalik contract as kind of the outlier here. He got 2 years at 3.7 per season. Yes, he scored 30 goals this year. But if you look at their numbers, Kubalik had 46 points in 68 games. Strome had he had 38 points in 58 games. So they were almost essentially at the same point per game. Kubalik checked in at 0.68, Strome 0.66. There's more concerns about Strome. You could argue he's had injury troubles last year. His consistency issues. He seems to only do well with DeBrincat. So just put him and DeBrincat and Kane together and keep him there. If that's the only way he succeeds, then why are we taking him off that line? I don't understand that. You could argue that playing center is far more valuable than playing the wing, which I agree with. So I think it's got to be some more. He probably wants the Kubalik money. The Hawks don't want to give him that. They may want to give him that 3rd or 4th year. He may only want 1 or 2 so he can hit unrestricted free agency and get on the open market. Those are all factors. But if it was me, I would give him something close to the Kubalik contract, not as much. I would go that 2-year route too so he can get his, unrestricted free agency and see what happens. I'd probably go somewhere right around the 3 to 3.2 million for, no more than 2 years at this point until he can prove he can be consistent. Gail, what would you, if you were in charge, what would Mr. Strome be getting? And you could even trade him if you want. It's fine by me.
Well, first off, I would not put him in the same ballpark as Kubalik. I think that Kubalik brings a lot more to the table. I mentioned on the last show that, I think that Strome is kind of on the outside looking in. He's played best at center. They tried him not at center. That didn't go real well. They tried him without DeBrincat. That didn't go real well. He just doesn't really have a fit and he's not as versatile. And I think that that's going to play against him. There has been talk that, maybe you just sign him for a 1-year deal and then he's a free, like you kind of mentioned, Greg, he's a free agent. He has arbitration rights. I could see that happening, especially with this flat salary cap, especially with, the situation that the Blackhawks are in. I think that signing him for a 1-year deal for maybe 2.5, and then he can bet on himself and say, hey, I'm gonna go for more money. I'll have arbitration rights. I'll have more to work with, more negotiating that I can do next season, and I'll show you guys that I'm good for the good contract. So I think he's gonna, and it'll be good for both sides to just do a 1 year, 2.5 million.
Brooke, where do you stand on Mr. Strome?
I agree with Gail. I would go 1 year because I have a couple issues. I go back and forth because I see where Dylan Strome can be valuable, with DeBrincat and stuff. But at the same time, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if we did move on from him, if we did trade him, if it would really be that big of a loss, kind of with what we've got going on right now with Kirby and maybe Khrushchev coming in and stuff. I'm not really opposed to him getting moved, I don't think, anymore. Like Gail said, he doesn't really provide much versatility. And I don't know. And I feel like it's kind of weird because you would think that a deal with Strome would get done before Kubalik. And the fact that it's dragging on so long makes me think like he's demanding way more than he's probably worth at this point. So I feel like if you are to bring him back, then make it a prove it deal. Like he's kind of slipped last season. Come back in, see if you can feed off of your successful year, see if you can keep that consistency. And if you can, then we can talk further. But maybe I would go 1 year, $2 million or something. But like I said, I'm not really opposed to moving him either, if that's what it comes to.
And I think that they should keep him around. I mean, you can never have too much center depth, and he's definitely been valuable in the past. And I think that there's potential there. So I think that they should do what they can to get him signed. But I also think that Strome is willing to maybe not a hometown discount, but maybe just so he can stay in Chicago and so he can stay with DeBrincat. And why is it always Strome and DeBrincat? A hockey player should be able to stand out on his own for his own and not, oh my gosh, I've got to be placed with this person to do well. And I'm probably being unfair to Strome because he can do well in other positions. And I think that, he was at a disadvantage last season when he was taken out of that center role, which I think is really his strength. But we'll see. We'll see what happens, won't we?
For sure. I agree with you, Gail. A center should be able to perform well regardless who his wingers are. That's the frustrating part. We also have two guys that I think a lot of people thought would be back, but have not been signed by anybody at this point, in defenseman Slater Cuckoo and Drake Kajula. Did I get that right? That's one of those names that just...
Is that how you say it? Kajula?
Is it? Kajula, I always want to call him Caligula. The history nerd in me
I say Kagula because that's how you spell it,
We'll just call him Drake. Drake has not signed anywhere. It's unlikely that either of them are going to be back with the Blackhawks at this point, but you never know. But we have a crowded blue line, and signing players like Matthias Janmark and Walmart kind of filled the role that our buddy Drake played last year. Why do you guys think they weren't brought back? And do you have any kind of prediction, any team you think they could fit well in? Gail, we'll start with you on our Cuckoo and Drake talk.
Let's get Cuckoo, Gail.
Okay, so Cuckoo's pretty simple. I think that they just have a crowded blue line. He doesn't bring as much to the table as some of their talented young guys. I think they're ready to bring the young guys into the fold. They don't need him, and so they didn't re-sign him. He's pretty simple. Kajula. Well, I don't know. Okay, so he was making $1.5 million. The other two, Janmark and Walmart, were only signed for 1 year. Was he looking for longer? Is it just because he's not Swedish? I have no idea why they didn't sign him. He's so versatile. He doesn't have the defensive aspect that the two of them are bringing to the table. For some reason, he was the odd man out, and that's a bummer because I really liked him. And and it could have something to do with Shaw too. If Shaw's healthy, if Shaw's not healthy, gee, maybe they could sign him to replace if he goes on long-term injury reserve or something. Maybe Drake can still come back. The Drake.
Brooke?
I'm with you guys on Cuckoo because obviously, I feel kind of bad for him because he was such a big part of our postseason, technically. So you would think he would play well enough to get re-signed, but obviously the way our team looks, he's not really needed. It's not really like a knock on him. It's just more about where the team is going. But I think he would make a good 7th defenseman for another team. But Kajula, I'm kind of shocked about, because Stan always talks about him so highly and that he was wanting to trade for him for so long. And then this kind of happened. But then a weird part of my brain, this might be kind of thinking outside the box a little bit, but before the season stopped, when we saw Brandon Hagel a bit in that one game before the season stopped, Brandon Hagel, I felt like kind of played a game that was similar to Kajula's a little bit, kind of a little pesky, whatever. So if maybe they thought, and like Gail said, we got Shaw, so if Shaw is healthy, that kind of fills that role. But I'm also thinking now they think they have prospects that can maybe fill that kind of grittier role that we've been needing. So maybe it was kind of we can save cap space and whatnot with them and focus on our future with our prospects in that sense. But I am kind of disappointed because I did like Kajula. I thought he brought a lot of good things. He could score. He could be a pest. I liked all of it. And if I were to think, I would think obviously someone like him would work well in a place like Philly or something. I don't think that's where he would end up, but that's just my thought process.
Sean, what's your take on these two guys?
I'll start with Kajula. Kajula's a spark plug. I mean, I really liked getting him over in Chicago. It was really fun to watch, especially in the playoffs. Whether his production didn't overwhelm, it didn't matter. Watching him play was a lot of fun, and he brought a lot of passion and a lot of that grit and a lot of that determination that we like to see in Blackhawks players. So I loved having him around, and I was hoping that they were going to re-sign him. And I'll kind of go off the table here and say that perhaps they still will. I mean, we just talked about Strome, and we don't know how that deal's working out or if it will. And that could just be the holdup. It could just be a matter of finding out where are those funds going to go and what's going to be left. And then with what's left, what can they do? So I'll sort of go on a whim here and say that perhaps they're not going to let him go. They just haven't signed him yet. If they don't sign him, I just think it would be for the same reasons that's already been touched on. Look who they brought in, look at the kind of players they already have. Maybe they just don't see the fit. But I'm going to be the optimistic one here, Gail, and say that let's hope they find a fit. And let's get them to sign Strome, have some money left, get Kajula back in the mix. Moving over to Cuckoo, I'm going to second what everyone's already said. It's a crowded blue line. They have a lot of young defensemen coming in. He just doesn't have a place. He's the outlier. He doesn't fit there anymore. There's just nowhere to put him. So it just didn't make sense. I mean, from a business standpoint, it made no sense to try to sign him or to retain him at all. And then you want to pick up Zadorov, and getting rid of Saad. So that just crowds things up even further. So why bother paying any attention there? And that's just one of those business decisions where he's going to walk, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it was a little surprising on both. Not so much Cuckoo, but they were obviously players that Colleton liked and trusted. They both got a lot of playing time. Kajula even spent some time on the top line a bit. So obviously they were favorites of the coach, but Cuckoo most likely, as all of you guys have said, was just a numbers game, most likely. Not a lot of space for him. You've got young guys coming up. You've still got veterans like Murphy and Dahan who are going to be taking up roster spots. Those guys are guys that will be ideal trade deadline candidates for teams are always looking for veteran defensemen coming to playoffs. So again, in the name of a rebuild, those are guys you could look to move later. But yeah, Cuckoo just a victim of the numbers game. As far as Kajula goes, Sean, I'll agree with you and think that I wouldn't 100% rule him out not returning. I think there's two factors, as you mentioned, the Strome deal. They have to make sure they have enough money. You want to take care of your high ticket item first and then play with what's left over. They also could be waiting. You got Brooke and Gail, you mentioned Andrew Shaw. They could be waiting on his status. I'm not ready to depend on Andrew Shaw to be a full-time hockey player again with his concussion history and his style of play. That also could be a factor why Drake hasn't gotten a contract. He's dealt with some concussions, and his style of play doesn't exactly make you hopeful that he's not going to get more down the road. So that could be a problem too. They could be waiting to see if Shaw is going to be, Marion Hosed, so to speak. And, that may be weighing in their decision too. If I'm a guy like Andrew Shaw, and I know he's a super competitive guy. He's your prototypical hockey player, guy. But I'd be definitely thinking twice about getting back out there, considering you've got a beautiful young family, you've got young kids. Is it worth it at this point? Those are decisions he's going to have to make. So we'll see. We'll talk about one guy next that we definitely know will be in a Blackhawks uniform next year and hopefully for many years to come. Young Mr. Kirby Dach, who is going to be heading out in a couple of days, I believe, for the Team Canada World Junior Championship evaluation camp, which lasts a month before the tournament. And then on a sidebar, that Canadian team is going to be stupid. If they don't win every game by like 8 goals, something's wrong. I mean, they're going to have Dach, Quentin Byfield, Dylan Cousins, Dylan Holloway, Cole Perfetti, Bowen Byram, Jamie Drysdale. I mean, that's just their top 2 lines and defensive pairings. It's unfair.
It is unfair.
Canada's a bunch of dirty cheaters.
Just get better hockey down there.
Yeah, well, until they lose and they start wishing death on teenagers on Twitter. That's always my favorite part of when Canada loses. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Back to Kirby Dach. What do you guys think of him taking part in this camp and in the tournament? Do you think it's a wise move, or do you think he should be it's good for him? We'll start with Mr. Canada, Sean, on this one. What do you think about this?
I was going to say, as the lone Canadian panelist here, I love it. When I heard the news, I was ecstatic. I'm so pumped to see him playing for Canada. For some reason, it didn't even cross my mind that he would even be part of the tournament, just because he became such a regular in my mind up here in the big leagues with the Hawks. So hearing the news just re-energized my excitement for this tournament, which in North America, as we know, is obviously a big deal yearly anyway, let alone around the world, and these European teams that are coming up and making their mark worldwide. But Dach getting this chance is going to be so important and so pivotal for his development and his confidence. As we saw in the latter half of last season, that confidence just started to skyrocket. Him getting to go in and play in this tournament with this level of elite talent, Greg, like you touched on, it's going to be like-minded players who are all young, hungry, looking to not only make a name for themselves, but take over this league. And they're going to start right now in this tournament. Dach is going to grow his confidence tenfold. He is going to outperform many in this tournament, and he's going to take a page out of Captain Sirius's book and just dominate, just like Taves did in 2006 and 7, more so in the latter. They won back-to-back goals with Team Canada, because that's what we do in Canada. And Dach will go and do the same and bring that confidence back to the Chicago dressing room and start to really take over his leadership role. So I am pumped. I'm ecstatic. It's good for him. It's good for Chicago. It's going to be a really fun tournament, and I can't wait.
Brooke, what's your thoughts on the World Juniors and Dach?
First, USA. Come on now. Although I'll give Kirby a pass though, because I love him. So I'll give him a pass there. We can gloat on Canada for a second. So it's a good move. I'm with Sean. I didn't even think that was even gonna happen, or I didn't even think of it, so I think it's great. He already proved what he can do, or what his potential is, and that was already getting so much better as the season went on and in the postseason. So I think we already figured that even without this experience, he'd probably come in next year and just continue to build and get better and better. But I think this could be probably the step that gets him really close to where his potential is. So I think it's amazing. I think he'll come back a completely different, not that different, but you know what I mean, stronger player. So I'm excited to see what this does for him.
Gail, what do you think?
Ditto. He's going to be with his peers, so that's going to be really fun and cool for him. He didn't get to do it last year because he was playing in the NHL, whereas most everybody else wasn't, his peers. And I think the tournament is supposed to run through January 5th, and there's really been no new news about the NHL. So I would assume that this will not conflict. I'm thinking that, the NHL season isn't going to start until more like the 15th or the 1st of February. So good for him. He'll be able to get that playing time in and get that experience and have a good time. And it's just all good and positive.
Yeah, I think when they first made this announcement, I'd completely forgotten that he was still a teenager, especially the way he played in the bubble. And then you go,
And his
wow.
maturity.
Yeah,
and his maturity.
Wow, he's only 19. That's kind of scary when you think about it. And
Great
I
for
think
the league.
this is a good move, as you guys all said. To me, it's better than sending him over to Europe to play. He's going to be playing, with just those scrimmages in that Canada camp alone is probably going to be better than any game he can play in Switzerland or Finland. No offense to those countries. If you're tuning in from there right now, please don't turn us off. But yeah, covering the AHL the last couple of years, I've talked to some of the guys that have left and played, and this tournament means so much to these kids. I talked to Eric Brandstrom when he was with the Wolves 2 years ago. He's part of the Senators organization now, but I talked to him right before he left to play for Sweden 2 years ago, and he was so excited and so honored, and it's a huge deal for these guys, and so for him to get that experience, I'm happy for him, and he's going to be playing some playoff style, intense, hotly contested games just before hopefully the NHL season starts. So he's going to have his motor at full blast from day one. So if playing and losing a gold medal game to Team USA right before the season starts gets him going, then I'm all for it. But chances are that's not going to happen. Canada's going to win the tournament by 1,000,000.
We can dream.
Yeah, that team is stupid. I don't care what any other country has. That's not even fair. That team could probably beat 10 NHL teams.
Beat our team for sure.
Probably. Well, especially if we don't have Kirby Dach playing on our side, we're going to struggle. All right. So moving on. Speaking of those European players, well, let's we're running kind of long on time. We'll skip the European update for a later episode. They'll still be there next week. So we'll for the sake of time, let's get on to the fun, end with a little fun history talk. History is my favorite portion. I love hockey history, obviously. The Athletic recently ran a fan poll they just covered all kinds of topics, from your opinion on GM, coach, players, but they also ran a fun question about which one of the Blackhawks players deserves to have his number next. I thought we can kind of incorporate that into our discussion. Obviously, we want to talk about players who are already retired, not guys who are still playing. We know 18 and 88 are going up to the rafters one day, but who of the current already retired Blackhawks deserves to have his number retired first? Gail, we'll start with you. Who do you think needs to have his number in the United Center rafters?
Well, the poll actually had, I think, 3 guys, and one of them was Larmer and Marian Hossa. And so, I Hossa, I guess he's not exactly retired yet, but he's in the Hall of Fame, and he made the Hall of Fame. And is anybody really going to wear number 81 again? He's the only one that's had 81 with the Blackhawks, and it's Hossa. There's no other discussion. Let's just move on.
Well, for the sake of the format, we'll keep discussing. Shaun, who is your guy for next retirement?
Yeah, I'm going to check off 2 of my personal boxes here: a goalie and a Canadian. I'm going to say Ed Belfour. I'm going to go really off the radar there and say, what he brought to Chicago just in his rookie season alone. What an outstanding Calder year he had to come in and sort of take the league by storm on some teams that he didn't really have a ton of winning with, but the numbers that he was able to put up and the presence he had was just second to none. So just his passion and his fire watching him play through the 90s was so much fun. I mean, he was the epitome of a Blackhawk with that drive and that passion, that grit and that aggression. He made those teams a lot of fun to watch. So I'm saying Belfour.
All right, Brooke, who's your number retirement? Who you getting up there?
Okay, so I feel like because Shaun had to put a Canadian, had to go that route. Okay, are we going to do this every week now? That we have to go American, right? So there was one person that came to my mind, but I'm not sure if he's in the Hall of Fame or not. I don't think so. So correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Tony Amonti? Is he in the Hall of Fame?
No, he is not.
Didn't think so. Okay, so I'll say him. I just liked him as a player, honestly. I don't know if he deserves it, but I just like it, so I'll just say it. But I like him a lot, and obviously I can't argue Hossa. I'm with Gail, obviously. It's like Hossa over everyone. If someone was on the Hawks and took his number, that would be highly offensive, and I can't even think about it because it is so offensive. So it has to be Hossa over everyone.
There's somebody else who wore number 10 that might have it retired in his honor before Tony Amonti. Just a little bit. He's Canadian, so we won't mention his name. I've got and I love Marian Hossa. He's one of my favorite players of all time. He's the best. But Steve Larmer needs to have his freaking jersey number retired before Marian Hossa. How he's not in the Hockey Hall of Fame is criminal. They need to put 28 in the rafters. You just look at what he did with the Blackhawks. He's still 5th in franchise history with 923 points, 3rd all time with 406 goals, 6th with 517 assists. Here's the most amazing stat of his career. In his 11 full seasons with the Blackhawks, he didn't miss a single game. He played every single game for 11 straight seasons during the 80s and early 90s when you were pretty much allowed to decapitate a player on the ice and only get a 2-minute penalty. I mean, that's the most impressive thing. That just shows you what he was worth to that team. I loved Steve Larmer so much growing up. I actually cheered for the New York Rangers in the 94 Stanley Cup Finals. And if you get me to root for a team from New York, you are special. Retire that number. And then you can put Hossa. There's going to be a whole lot of guys from these last runs that are going to go up there. We're going to look like the Canadians at some point where everybody's going to be in their 40s and 50s out there. 7 will get retired one day, probably for Chellios and Seabrook, like they did with 3. We know Kane and Taves are going up there. Keith, most likely. But yes, Gail, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're absolutely fine. I make a deal with you. Let's do this. We'll put Larmer in the Hall of Fame, and then we'll retire Hossa's number, and then everybody gets something.
Or we could just retire them both on the same night and just have one big party with pierogies.
And there'll be no
everything.
numbers left for any of the Blackhawks.
There's plenty. There's all a bunch of numbers in the 40s and 60s. I don't think there's 70s. Not a lot of 70s been played. So
hopefully the players can be a little more creative than their design team for those jerseys.
There we go. All right, let's end on another little history fun. Our last little brief discussion we'll do here tonight before wrapping it up. If you had to put together for one game a dream starting lineup of all-time Blackhawks, you can pick anybody, a left wing, right center, right wing, 2 defensemen, and a goalie. Who is your all-time Blackhawk dream starting lineup? We'll go reverse order this time. Shaun or Brooke, we'll start with you. Who's your dream lineup?
Okay. So, fun story. I got a fun story for you guys. I said this on Twitter that I do have a fun story about a Blackhawks Hall of Famer. So, my dad has met Bobby Hall a few times, and the last time he had talked to him, Bobby Hall had mentioned that the best defenseman on their team was Keith Magnuson. So, I feel like because Bobby Hall said that, I'm going to put Keith Magnuson and Doug Wilson as my defenseman. Stan Mikita at center. Patrick Kane, obviously, at right wing. You can't have a team, I don't think, without him. And then Bobby Hall probably on left wing. And Tony Esposito at goalie. That'd be my team.
All right.
Nice.
Shaun, what are your thoughts? What is your all-Canadian Blackhawks lineup?
So I was going to say, let's redeem myself with our American viewers here a little bit, because most of my team is actually from where you guys are from, believe it or not.
Yay, finally.
But I thought it'd be fun to sort of keep this team to represent my fandom. So, there's all kinds of greats. Obviously, Brooke named a number of them, but my team's going to be strictly based on who I enjoyed as I grew up and who's been part of my journey as a Blackhawks fan. So right wing, I'm going Kane. He's my, despite my post that some people misconstrued on him potentially being traded and how I could see that happening, Kane is my favorite Blackhawk. To set the record straight, I don't want to see him go anywhere. It was just a hypothetical that could happen and how it could happen. Let's put that there for the world. So Kane's on the right. I got Roenick in center. And I actually got Amonti on the left. So good name drop there, Brooke. Chellios on right D, Keith on left D, and right back to who should get his number on the rafters, Belfour and net.
All right, Gail, who's your starting six?
All right. Well, I'm probably pretty predictable and boring because I just went pretty recent with all this. So most recent, and it's all kind of the same genre. So we got Patrick Sharp on the left wing, Tays in the center, and yeah, okay, I'm gonna go with Kane. But I had a really hard time crossing off Hossa because, right? I mean, he's the all-round player that Kane is not, but offense always wins. Duncan Keith, and okay, his partner in crime, Brent Seabrook. But I had a really hard time crossing off Nicholas Jomerson because
I would be so disappointed if you didn't say that. I was counting on you to say that.
You were?
Yeah, I was hoping, because I was thinking about it, but I'm like, you know what? Gail's got me covered. She's going to say Jomerson. She's going to do him justice. So good.
All right. Well, Seabrook is pretty good at scoring those timely goals. And again, that's why I guess we got to go with Seabrook. But man, Jomerson just gets the shaft. He gets the shaft just because he doesn't have that no movement clause. He gets sent off to the desert, and he's the. There's something to be said for Jomerson. He's got 3 cups as well. And this is just my crazy out of the world pick for goalie. Let's give. Well, these guys are going to win a cup, right? Right. Okay, so we're going to go with Leonard. Let's have Leonard for our goalie.
Okay.
Gail, you speak my language. I was going to say Leonard too.
I was rooting for him. I was so rooting for him with the Vegas Golden Knights, and that didn't work out.
Well, I'm going to go a little more historic.
Sure.
My top line is going to be centered by Stan Mikita, who is tough not to take Jonathan Toews, but man, Mikita was just magic. So I got to put Bobby Hull on his left. You can't split those 2 guys up. There's your goal scorer. Right wing, I know Patrick Kane is the go-to guy at right wing, but Gail, I've got your back. I put Marian Hossa on my right wing because you need that. Somebody's got to play defense on that line, and you need that big bruising guy. He's going to create all the space for Mikita and Hull to just light things up and get those rebounds. On the back end, I have my favorite Blackhawks defenseman of all time, Chris Chellios. Nobody was tougher than him. And next to him, joining Marian Hossa in the Hall of Fame this year, Dougie Wilson, the greatest hockey hair in the history of hockey hair, and us hair guys have to stick together. Doug Wilson and Tony Esposito. You can't go wrong with Tony O. It's tough. You had some good choices there. Belfour was up there. It's hard to not pick Glenn Hall, but man, Tony Esposito, when you look at the numbers he put up in the era he played against the players he faced on a nightly basis, it's hard to go wrong. If you need one game won, Tony Esposito in his prime was one of the toughest to beat ever. So that's my lineup. Good luck trying to beat any of those lineups. Those are all very good choices.
That was a very fun exercise.
Yeah, we're gonna do more fun history stuff as we go along, get a different viewpoints. But that's going to wrap up this week's episode of Blackhawks Banter. Once again, I want to thank Gail, Brooke, and Sean for joining us here. This is something we're going to do every Monday going forward. So make sure you are liking the Hockey Writers on Facebook to catch our live feed and plus get all of our updates. Like the YouTube channel as well, and follow us on Twitter to not only stay up to date on all of our Blackhawks banter, but all of our Hockey Writers live shows and all the great content that's being pumped from our army of talented writers over at the Hockey Writers. So we'll wrap it up from here. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys next Monday night. Thank you, everybody. Good night.